Tonight there's going to be a jailbreak somewhere in this town. I'm guessing it's going to be at the jail. Jailbreak is a 1986 game from Konami, and you play a police officer who has to fight off hordes of prisoners who have escaped from the prison, and you have to rescue the warder of the jail at the end of the, I think it's the 5th level. Very simple side-scrolling stuff. And by the way, if you're wondering where's the MSX version, there isn't one. This is one of the few Konami games where there is no MSX release. And there's speech which gets a little bit cut off on my version with my snapshot here at the beginning. Game published by Konami in the UK. Yes, they started publishing their own games over here. Quite collectible now as well, because usually Konami games are of course ported by Imagine, or Ocean by Imagine, on the Imagine label. And there we go, we're all dead. You're the police officer, you just have a gun, and you have to fight off the hordes of prisoners who move as fast as you do, despite having a ball and chain around their leg. What kind of prison is this? You think Amnesty International or somebody would be involved in a prison that had prisoners with a ball and chain around their leg? And where did they get all the guns from? I know I'm overthinking this, I'm dead again. It's quite a difficult game. Sinclair user gave this 5 out of 5. Right, if we can touch that woman, which we can't, we should get a gun. I said touch, you could have rescued it. They're civilians. Oh, I've shot of... There's men and women and hostages you have to rescue, and when you rescue them you get points, and you get increased firepower, a rocket launcher and a grenade launcher, I think they are. But you need those weapons to get past certain parts of the games. I'm dead. That's it. That's as far as I've got.
The warden has been taken hostage. Free him no matter what the cost.
Over to the C64 with a very red-looking man. Looks like Brian Clough. Well, not facially, but in terms of colour. Graphics by Mark Jones, who later went on to work for Ocean. To get a beefy tune, I think it's David Whittaker. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. Now, in the arcade game, you can move diagonally. In this version, in fact all 3 versions we're going to look at today, you can't. Despite the fact the enemies can move diagonally, and some of them can even shoot diagonally, so you can only go up, down, left and right. There's a hostage up there. We need to get up there to rescue him. And all the prisoners on this version look like members of Right Said Fred. I'm dead, and off I go again. It's it's not particularly attractive, is it? And the movement is extremely restrictive. Got me. Sometimes you get hit by bullets that you can't actually see. There's Vicky Michelle from Hello Hello running towards me. Zap didn't like this game at all, and you can guess why. Got me again. Did something hit me there? Was it invisible? Who knows? Over to the Amstrad.
The warden has been taken hostage. Free him no matter what the cost.
Amstrad appears to use the actual arcade sound, like the Spectrum and C64 has a 12-year-old pretending to be American. Off we go on the Amstrad. No music when you're playing the game. Yeah, I mean, it looks very basic. Amstrad Action didn't like this game, but they still gave it 65%. Reasonably scrolling graphics, the convicts are very tough, addictive and demanding gameplay, but they hope Konami has better games to come. And the second opinion says, the Amstrad version is boring, you die easily, and it's infuriating. So 65% seems rather generous. But it's not very good. It's not very good at all. Look, it's not quite as tough as the Spectrum version, but It's, yeah. This is my second playthrough of the game, by the way, on the Amstrad, because I lost the capture the first time round. Back on the Spectrum. There we go. The woman disappears and we get a rocket launcher, which launches, rockets. And you can blow different things up with this now as well. Like the barrels, and there's a man there who you can't shoot still. No, I'm dead again. This game is incredibly hard. And if you shoot a hostage... I'm dead again. Back on the C64. Right, we've got another weapon. If you shoot a hostage, you lose all your power-ups, weapons, and go back to just having a gun, which is super unfair. Forward it on a bit on the C64. I am cheating now, by the way, because this game is utterly impossible. It's completely unfair, completely impossible, and you repeatedly just get hit by things you cannot see. Let alone when things are up at the top where you can't see if anything's firing. This is at the end of level 1, and I just have to shoot all the baddies. It's no big end of level baddie. You just get a kind of attack of lots of the same baddie, and you just have to shoot them all. Are we done? Stage completed! We've completed stage 1. Off to stage 2, and Vicky Michelle again runs towards me. Yvette, that's a character's name in Hello Hello. Yvette from Hello Hello runs towards me and gives me a power-up. All the weapons look the same on the C64, although they do have different effects, but they make the same. The rocket launchers look different on the Spectrum. On the C64, they look the same as all the other weapons. Back on the Amstrad at the end of stage 1. And yes, I'm cheating on the Amstrad version now as well, where the collision detection is turned off. Except, jailbreak is so terrible that even the cheats don't work properly, so sometimes, under certain circumstances, you can still die. I had this game. I thought it was perfectly dreadful at the time, and it still is today. There's a hostage. He looks like he's wearing some kind of mask while he waves. What if they put some kind of hood over his head? I've got lots of power-ups now. I've got the rocket launcher and the other thing, the egg launcher. It launches eggs. Look, I'm launching eggs at them. This is dross. It's unfair, poorly designed, ugly dross. You know how LA SWAT is bad, but it's on budget? This is actually in many ways worse because it's full price. And therefore you think they'd have time to sort out the problems. You think Konami would have some kind of pride, like they did in Japan with their MSX games, of doing a good job. What we've got here, and back on the Spectrum version, is just dross. Spectrum version suffers from a problem where people repeatedly come from behind you and throw bottles at you, which is quite what you'd like to do to the coders of this game. There we go, and they like to spawn as well, just as you respawn. Back on the C64, and look, here the main character looks a bit like Tommy Cannon in Plaza Patrol, and you get so bored with this game that you think, well, they should have done a Cannonball Plaza Patrol game, because it'd be better than this. Ocean could have done a I'm thinking, I'm off on one because this is dreadful. On the C64 version, if you go along the top of the level and keep firing, then baddies just basically don't appear for quite a long time. Not that anybody, I was going to complain about that, but clearly this game hasn't been playtested at all, so rubbish like that is bound to happen. End of level, what is it? 2. Right, I'm on to level 3, which on the C64 version is the last level. Spectrum Amstrad had 5 levels that I think the arcade has. No, C64 version gets 3. This is stage 2, End of stage 2 on the Amstrad. And look, some kind of bin lorry comes hurtling towards you at such a fast speed. And you can destroy it with a rocket launcher, or you can just kind of just slowly walk out of its way. Firing eggs at right, said Fred. I mean, look at the state of these graphics. See, why is the pink of the CPC's palette being used like that? On the barrels, unless it's some kind of optimization to save. I know from what Steve Pickford said about doing Ghosts and Goblins, or was it Ghouls and Ghosts? Can't remember. I think it was Ghosts and Goblins, that he was forced to do 4-colour sprites in that game because apparently it saved memory. Which might explain some of the ugliness of this, but it's not something you see on most CPC games. And why would a game as dreadful? I mean, look at the state of this! Now you can't see the bullets. Now you can even see less of what's coming towards you. It's so easy to shoot the hostages as well. Because what you can't do on this game, unlike most games of this genre, is just keep on firing. Because what happened is while you're firing at the baddies, and this is really slowed down now, when you keep on firing at the baddies, the stray bullets could hit the hostages and you'll lose all your weapons, so you'll suddenly lose your rocket launcher and be back to just your pistol. It's nuts! By all means, penalise the player for killing hostages, but don't take away all the weapons when you're in the middle of a melee of enemies. It's just crap game design. I assume the arcade version, I think the arcade version does do this. I've played it briefly, but so you can't blame the programmers for copying that, but it's just the cherry on the top of the dog poo that is this game. And the fact that up there the enemies are firing diagonally. I cannot fire diagonally on any of these versions, yet the enemies can, and they can walk diagonally. When you're playtesting this, the code is not thinking, oh, hang on a minute, we can only go, our character can only move in 4 directions, but the enemies can move in 8. Back on the Spectrum, where I'm cheating so spectacularly, I'm now using a file from the RZX archive because I can't play through this absolute tat. I could type in a cheat, but it looks... This is a 1986 game, and it looks like something from 2 years before. And why would you allow, again then, baddies to come from behind all the time and kill you, especially when you respawn? You press space to activate whatever weapon you're holding for the 3 seconds that you have it. See that? I just killed a civilian then. And because I can't fire all the time. Coming to the end of the game on the C64, small mercies. And on C64, all you have to do is touch the warden, and that's the game completed. Well, it's not actually completed, because what it does is it chucks you through to level 1 again. End of stage 5 on the Spectrum version. Be careful you don't shoot the warden here, or you lose a life and you have to go back to earlier in the level. End of stage 5 on the Amstrad. There's a man doing a YMCA dance there, one of the hostages. Careful with your bullets now at this stage, because when the warden comes into view, you don't want to shoot him. Fun to stay at the YMCA. There he is, there's the warder. Right, what? I'm using the egg weapon. I'm firing eggs. But don't hit the hostage behind him, because if you do, you'll lose your weapons, be back to your pistol, because this game hates you. And it's just a question of keep... And there's the Vicky Michelle character on the Amstrad version, by the way, comes running through looking like a Smurf. More eggs. Firing more eggs. Keep firing the eggs. The arcade game isn't much copper, this, to be honest. You can see why Konami didn't bother porting it to the MSX. Right, that's the end of the level. And here's stage 6, which is stage 1, because you're doing it all again. Jailbreak isn't a good arcade game, and it's not a good home computer conversion. A horrible fault from the arcade game is making you lose all your weapons apart from the pistol if you accidentally shoot a civilian, which you will, but the home computer conversions are an extra insult over an already bad arcade game. No 8-way character control, just 4 ways. Granted, most of the enemies can only shoot 4 ways, but they can all walk in 8 directions while you can't, and some of the enemies can indeed shoot diagonally, which you've got no way to countermeasure without getting directly in their line of fire. It's nuts. And that's before you get into stuff like baddies constantly coming from behind you and just throwing stuff at you with no warning, meaning you're having not just to worry about what's coming on in front of you, what's coming behind you. It's just such a terrible game on all 3 formats. The Spectrum version is the hardest. It looks dreadful. It looks like a game for a few years before. Zap didn't like the C64 version, and I don't. They pointed out the repetitive nature of the game, the bad graphics, and just how generally dreadful it is. Amstrad actually managed to mention how bad it is on the CPC, but still give it a reasonable score. It's just dross on all 3 versions. I'd feel the same about this game whether it was $1.99 as LA SWAT was, or the 10 quid Konami were charging for this game. The one consolation for any poor so-and-so who bought this tat back in 1986 is that the Konami full-price versions of this game for the UK 8-bits are now considered quite collectible indeed. So find some chump on eBay and flog it to them.